Welcome to this presentation on work teams. No matter what industry you end up having a career in, the military, corporate America, academia, it doesn't matter. You're going to end up working with groups of people on a task. And this is what a work team is all about. A work team is not just a group. It's a specific kind of group. It's focused on a particular mission. The people are put together in this group to accomplish something. So they need to coordinate their efforts in a way that isn't the case with all kinds of groups. And the goal is that there's a certain synergy. The hope is that the work team is going to produce more than you would have gotten by just summing up the individual efforts of people working alone. So the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's what work teams are all about. And I guarantee you that at some points in your career, you will be part of work teams. Work teams can be put together in a variety of different ways. They can be from the same work area, so you could have a work team where everybody on the team comes from the same part of the company, or you could have people, maybe they're from the same level of the organization, but they're drawn from a variety of different departments. This is something that's called a cross-functional team. So you might have engineers and accountants and human resource people all working together on the work team. Teams can also vary greatly in how much autonomy or power they have. Sometimes a work team doesn't really have a lot of leeway in what they do or how they do it. They're given a certain mission and they're given a certain set of procedures that they have to follow. Other times, the work team is just sort of given a general goal, and it's completely up to them to figure out how to get the job done. Work teams can be virtual. You might be working with people from the other side of the world that are part of your team, and you never meet in person, but you do a lot of meeting on Zoom or Google Hangout or whatever technology your company happens to be using. You don't want teams to get too big. They should only have 5 to 9 members. That seems to be the magic number. Industrial and organizational psychologists sometimes refer to something called the 2-pizza rule. If your team is so big that 2 pizzas aren't going to be enough to feed everybody during a meeting, then your team is probably too large. When you bring a new work team together, it's rare that they just are ready to hit the ground running and start from scratch and be working at full capacity in a short amount of time. Teams usually go through predictable stages of development. Now, there are many different models to describe this. The one I'm about to describe here is one of the oldest ones, developed by a researcher named Tuckman in 1965. But this is just one of many different models of work team development. According to Tuckman, the first stage of the team development is called the forming stage. This is when people are just getting introduced to each other, they're getting to know each other, everybody's on their best behavior, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and the group is spending a lot of time clarifying their mission. What exactly is it they hope to accomplish? Once that transpires, the group kind of moves into something called the storming stage. In other words, the honeymoon is over when the storming stage comes. People start to have open disagreements with each other, and there can be tension. Now, hopefully this tension generates energy and makes people work hard, but it's not as relaxed and as friendly as it is during the forming stage. Assuming you survive the storming stage, you move into the norming stage, where people adjust to their roles. They begin to accept who the leader of the group or leaders in the group are going to be. And they learn how to ease tension. People start to learn their place, figure out where they fit in, and know how they can best contribute. The performing stage is the stage at which the group is actually accomplishing its goals. Things are happening, and the group is doing what it was designed to do. The adjourning stage is just what it sounds like. Well, mission is accomplished, and there's really no reason for the team to stay together anymore. So people sort of go their separate ways, maybe to be reunited again in the future to work on some other project. Obviously, teams are not always successful, and there are a wide range of reasons why teams might fail at their mission. First of all, they simply may not have the resources to do it. During the pandemic, there was a lot of criticism of the vaccine rollout. In the early stages, where states were trying desperately to get the vaccines into the arms of people who needed it, there was a lot of criticism about how long it took and how disorganized it was. Well, part of the problem was that the federal government dumped all of these vaccines on the states without warning and then told them to make it work somehow, but didn't provide any additional resources. And so the states didn't have the manpower, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the facilities, and so they were doomed to fail because of a lack of resources. Work teams often suffer from the same problem. The company puts a group of people together and says, get this done, but they fail to provide release time so that people can take time from their other job to work on the assignment, or they're not given the tools or money that they need to get the job done. Teams can also fail because they start to get too bogged down in meetings. Too many meetings that start taking too long, and this can sap the energy out of the team and decrease morale. So one of the things you need to be on guard against in organizations is the meeting kind of taking over the life of the group. In my own personal experience with more meetings than I can remember in my career, I would say almost every meeting that I've been a part of, the time could have been cut in half or maybe even less, and we still could have gotten the job done. Too much irrelevant stuff goes on at most meetings. Sometimes groups fail because they haven't been given the authority to actually make things happen. So a work team is put together to develop some new policy that the company desperately needs. But then at the end of the line, when they come up with their ideas and their plan, they depend on somebody else to be able to make it happen. And lots of times this other entity, whoever it might be, really doesn't have much interest in what the work team has been working on. And so all of their hard work just disappears. If the work team doesn't have the authority in and of itself to make it happen, this can be a cause of failure. Sometimes teams fail because they just haven't put together a very good team. You don't have enough people on the team who know what they're doing. They don't have the expertise or experience to accomplish the task. Or maybe they have all of the technical expertise, but you don't have a good combination of people with good social skills. You don't have people who are effective leaders or managers. You don't have people who work well on teams. And so the lack of people skills can sort of sabotage the entire team effort. Sometimes normal human things happen in work teams, the same things that would happen in any other group. People sometimes just don't like each other, or they become jealous of the recognition somebody else is getting, or they feel competitive with other team members and they want to look better than their teammates do. All of these things can get in the way of teams being successful. Sometimes teams fail because they haven't been given a clear objective. There's some hazy problem at the company that hasn't been well defined, and a work team is put together to try to solve this. But it's not really clear what it is they're supposed to be doing exactly. And so there's a lot of aimless shuffling around and false starts, and the team can't be successful because they've never really defined exactly what success would look like. And sometimes teams fail because of something you're going to be studying about in another module in this course, something called social loafing. When you put a number of people together to work together on a task, there's often a tendency for people to sort of slack off and let other people do their share of the work. This is called social loafing, and it's something that's found in most human work groups to some extent. Well, not surprisingly, social loafing can be a bad thing on a team as well. So given the importance of having your work teams be successful, what are some of the things that organizations need to keep in mind to ensure that their work teams are as effective as they can be? First of all, make sure they have the resources to do what they need to do, and make sure there's somebody that can manage or lead the group. The people that you put together need to trust each other, and they have to have the right combination of abilities and expertise. And putting together an effective team often is kind of like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. You got to get just the right mix of personalities and diversity and so on. You also need to have an effective reward system. Employees need to feel as if they're going to get something out of being on this team, whether it's recognition or a bonus or it's putting them in line for a promotion at some point. There needs to be something in it for the employees. If they perceive that it's eating away at their own personal time and career, and they're not getting anything out of it, they're not going to be highly motivated. And teams must be able to handle conflict. Even on the best functioning work teams, there are going to be times where people disagree, where they don't get along, where somebody's feelings get hurt, and the team has to be able to get past this. They have to be able to manage that conflict and move on with the job at hand. And there's a real skill to assigning people to the best fitting roles. If you get a collection of employees together, everybody on that team is good at something. And the team is going to be most effective if you have people doing the things that play to their talents the best. This doesn't always happen on work teams, but it's something you need to be on the lookout for. Work teams have formal roles that need to be filled, but there's also informal roles that most work teams end up having some individual who kind of steps in and does this thing for the group. Sometimes one individual might fill more than one role on the work team. So if it's a relatively small team of 5 or 6 people, people need to multitask. You need to be sort of the guy or the woman to step in for more than one function. Let me give you an example of the way this is sometimes thought of. I want to emphasize that I'm not going to ask you any questions on the quiz from this slide. These are just descriptive terms that are used to describe different functions and groups. For example, you have the advisor. There's got to be somebody in the group who knows stuff, the person you go to when you need information. And this person is probably different than the linker, the person who coordinates people. They take what person A does and what person B does and kind of puts them together or assigns work in a way that these two people aren't duplicating each other's work. The creator could be the creative idea person. This is the one that comes up with insights that the group needs to figure out where they want to go. The promoter. If the group is working in isolation, if the group is in obscurity somewhere in some corner of the company and nobody knows what they're doing, their work is not going to be very effective. They're not going to be very successful. They're not going to have much of an impact. So you need the promoter, the person who champions the group to the rest of the company, who publicizes what the group is doing, who spreads the word about what the group has to offer. The assessor. This is the person who's kind of assessing what the options are at any given time. We can go this direction or that direction, but they know what the options are and they can continually lay out for the decision makers on the team, okay, here's what these options are. The organizer, this is the person who provides structure. Okay, how are we going to do things? What procedures need to be followed? How can we do this so it's kind of done in a standard way? And no matter which one of us is performing the task, we know it's getting done according to the rules. The person who kind of puts that in place is called the organizer. The producer. This is the person that kind of keeps the group on task. Somebody sometimes needs to be the one who calls attention to the fact that this coffee break has been going on a little bit too long and we need to get back to work. Or during a meeting, the conversation has kind of gotten off on a tangent that has nothing to do with our job. And as fun as this is, we really need to get back to the task at hand. So the producer is the person who kind of keeps the group moving in the direction they're supposed to be moving. The controller is the enforcer. This is the person who can make sure that rules are followed, and also, if somebody is not doing their job, calling them out on it. The person who kind of brings people back into line and makes sure everybody's doing their fair share. And finally, the maintainer. This is the person that fights the team's external battles. If the team needs resources from the company that they're not getting, or if there's some other group who is an obstacle that's interfering with the work team getting their job done, the maintainer is the one who fights the battle on behalf of the team, gets out there and tries to clear the obstacles or extract the resources from the higher ups that are needed in order to get the job done. So these are different ways of thinking about the informal roles that have to get filled on most work teams. And as I said before, if you have a small team, you might have somebody who's the creator and the advisor. You might have a person who's the producer and the enforcer. But all of these things need to get done in order for a team to be successful. And also keep in mind, I'm not going to ask you any questions about the names of any of these roles on the quiz. Another thing that can make teams effective is decreasing power differences between the different team members. If you've got a team made up of people drawn from different levels of the organization, there's going to be a natural power difference. You might have a boss working with some of his or her employees. You might have a senior vice president working with somebody who's an intern. And it can be very intimidating for the person lower down on the food chain to challenge the ideas or to make suggestions to somebody higher up in the organization as to how things should be done. So good work teams try to minimize these power differences in a variety of ways, but one of the most popular ways of doing this is through a team building exercise of some sort. The goal of team building is to decrease the power distance between people. Try to make the managers and the bosses look a little more human and a little less dignified. And if team building is done right, it builds cohesion and trust among the people in the group. They've had fun together, they've bonded, they trust each other. And the morale of the group is going to be much higher, and this is going to make them work more effectively. So companies in recent years have been spending an increasing amount of money engaged in team building activities. Most of the time, these are the things you want to look for in a corporate team building activity. They should be competitive and challenging. Usually you've got people working together or competing against other small groups, but you want to give them something that's achievable. You don't want them to feel defeated or deflated in some way. You want them to be able to get the thing that they're doing and at the same time work together as a team in a competitive way. There should be a focus on communication. Hopefully the connections that are forged during the activity are going to translate into better communication on the job. People have to communicate with each other quickly and in a very informal way during a team building exercise. And the hope is that this will translate in some way or other to the office when you get back. And finally, the team building activities need to be fun. It should not feel like work. It should be something people look forward to. You're getting out of the office. You're dressing differently. The competition that you're creating should be friendly and lighthearted. So you're playing games. And the games ought to be the kind of thing that people need to work together on. They're doing silly or embarrassing things, but they're all doing it. And so everybody looks equally silly to everybody else, including the boss. And remember, you're creating bonds between people that are hopefully going to last a lot longer than the activity. And you're making memories. You're going to fondly look back on the team building activity as something that you enjoyed. So most of the time, team building activities involve some kind of physical activity. Usually, certainly out of the office, you're outside engaging in some kind of group activities. The pictures that you see on this slide show a variety of things. There are rope courses, like in the upper left-hand up in the upper left-hand corner that people will be engaged with. Here are some other pictures from actual team building activities. It's not clear to me what's going on in the one in the upper left corner. It looks like you've got two different people with their feet fastened in these things, and they have to be able to walk together. So it looks like they're going to have a race where you've got to cooperate with your partner in order to beat the other people. And you've got archery competitions down in the lower right-hand corner. Lower left-hand corner, you've got teams trying to assemble something out of pipes, and presumably they're in competition with other groups. Water activities of some sort or another are kind of popular and fun, used by a variety of companies. There's a couple of other examples. You have people um, building cardboard boats or other silly kinds of floating contraptions and racing each other around. Some of you may have heard that we've even done some of these water team building activities in this course in the past. Here's one such picture from one of those classes. And here's a picture from a different year. Same idea though. These are usually, some people are a little hesitant about it and other people are excited about it, but it always turns out to be a very memorable experience. Given the pandemic world we live in right now, though, I'm sorry that this can't be happening this term. I'd be fired if I tried to do something like this now.